Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I wanted to sit down and talk to you guys about something a little bit more personal. I love doing fun vlogs and fun videos, but I think as someone who enjoys doing YouTube, it's important to talk about serious matters as well sometimes. And while this isn't a serious matter for everybody, it's a serious matter for like a lot of people, and also just like it's a big part of like my life. So as most of you probably know, and if you're new here, then you're about to find out, my dad passed away almost a year ago on Christmas Day from cancer. That's a whole nother freaking story, but I just kind of wanted to make a video about the things that people don't really tell you about losing a parent. When I lost my dad, it's kind of like, it's so hard to explain unless you've been through it, but I went through this phase where like when I knew he was like possibly gonna die, I was kind of like, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, it'll be sad, but I'll move on, and like time heals all wounds. And like I'd never been through like a huge loss in my life before, so it was something that like I didn't really know what to expect, but I thought I did, and I really didn't at all. So I just want to give you a heads up like right away. I tend to cope with humor, so if I like make a joke that's kind of like dark or anything along that line, I apologize in advance. I don't mean it that way, it's just like I tend to cope with like humor and making like dark jokes and stuff. So I'm just gonna kind of make some key points and talk about them a little bit. So the first thing nobody tells you about losing a parent is that aside from all the obvious, the world just keeps going, and you just feel like you are being dragged behind all the time. Your whole world just flipped upside down, and your whole world just stopped and changed. And it's like there's this initial period where people grieve with you, you know, but then their lives like go on. Like time doesn't stop for anybody, and they just keep moving on, but you're like stuck in this new life, this new reality. And it sometimes just seems like the world's moving too fast, and you just need it to slow down so you can take a breather, and you don't get it. It's all about literally like, if you don't get up and start walking, you're just gonna keep being dragged behind this car. The next point is, so a lot of people say to you that holidays, birthdays will be very hard, and they are. But for me, I've noticed that there's some normal days that are even harder. Like you brace yourself for birthdays, you brace yourself for holidays, and it sucks, but there's days that like you wake up and you kind of feel like it might be like a happy sunny day, and you just feel horrible, and then you feel like you should be happy but you're not. And it's like sometimes just like normal days just feel terrible, and they almost feel like worse than these expected hard days. Anyway, losing a parent or a loved one, especially if you haven't before, it's kind of your first encounter with like permanency. You grow up your whole life kind of thinking that like the only permanent thing in life is death, and that like once you die you can't come back. But like when it really happens to you, you really realize that like that's so permanent that like for the rest of like my time here on this planet, like I won't see my dad again. And like that's so permanent. And it's just like, I feel like as human beings, like everything is very temporary, and everything in our lives is temporary, and then this happens and it's like you really see like permanence for the first time, and it's actually like it can be very unsettling. Going along with that, like the rest of your life suddenly seems a lot longer. Like I think back on it and I'm like, I had 19, I guess, great years with my dad being around, and because it's been like my whole life, it feels like it's been a really long time. And then I think about that and multiplying it by like 3, you know, hopefully I live that long. That seems like a really long time to be without my dad, and it just suddenly seems like a really long life. Even though life is short, it seems longer. Your life is different forever. It's not one of those things where I said earlier like time heals all wounds and you move on. Like time can lessen your wounds, but like you don't move on. Like you kind of learn to live with it, but your life's always going to be different. For example, like my family of 4 like that lived in our house is now 3, and it's always going to be like that. It's just like your life is literally just different forever. Like it's never gonna like go back to normal. Like you're never gonna go back to who you were. It's just changed, and it's gonna be changed like forever. One thing that I didn't know about losing a parent or anybody, and this could just be me, but grief is not exactly the way that I pictured it. And what I mean by that is that I kind of thought like when I initially lost that person that would be like the hardest part, and that like I would just grieve for like a long time or whatever, and then it would kind of like get better after that. But for me, it was a little bit of the opposite. Like I found that when I first lost that person, it was like I was in like such a state of shock that I kind of was like weirdly motivated. Like I was like, I'm gonna live my best life for dad, like in his honor. And it was upsetting, but it was kind of almost like it didn't feel real. Like it felt like he would just be back after a while, or like I don't even know how to explain it. And then it was like after a month or so maybe where like it really started to set in, and it just like got super depressed and like super just like grieved really hard. But it came like later than I thought it would, because I guess grieving's different for everybody. Like I guess it just wasn't what I expected, and I didn't expect it to be as hard as it was. Like, and that sounds weird because people are like, well, you lost a parent, like do you expect it to be easy? And like no, but I guess like I expected it to be hard, but I didn't realize how hard. It was like what you would expect times like 10. Another thing they don't tell you is it's just kind of like with anybody that you lose, there will be times where like you kind of like after a while, when you kind of start to like come out of the fog and you kind of start to like move forward with your life, every once in a while you'll kind of just remember, and like you'll get hit with this thought of like, that person died, that person is not here anymore. And it's almost like you forgot in a way that like you know they're gone, but in a sense you forgot, and then it'll hit you and all of a sudden it's just like sits so heavy again, and like it just is like you're like, that really happened. Like that wasn't my imagination, like that happened, and like this is still my life, this is still reality. Like life reminds you every once in a while that hey, you're still going through this really traumatic situation. Another thing is, so this is kind of like a way to cope, I guess, but like there's a good balance point, I think, between like grieving and being busy. This is something I learned through counseling. There's two like sides of this spectrum. There's like the grieving side, and then there's like the being busy and distracted side. And some people tend to either just grieve and like not get out of bed for months and grieve and grieve and grieve, like let it ruin their life. And then there's other people that like want to stay busy like 24/7, like never deal with it, just push it away. You have to find like a balance. You have to find that middle ground to where like you can grieve and feel it and like let it happen, but then like not fall into it. And like you also need to stay busy, but not so busy that you're not dealing with anything. And I know everybody deals with things differently, but like one of the most important things to do in these situations is to like acknowledge it, but not like let it swallow you, I guess. Another point is that it can definitely traumatize you. This can vary for different people. It kind of depends on the death as well. For me, I watched my dad die. I watched him like take his last breath. I watched him basically go from 100 to 0 from cancer in a couple of months, and I still have like nightmares about that. Like for the longest time, like for the first like month or so after he passed away, I had nightmares like every single night, and now it's like more of an occasional thing, but I still get them. And like it's definitely like traumatizing to like see that kind of stuff, or like this is just from my own experience, but it definitely like kind of traumatized me. Losing a loved one can also instill a lot of fear into you that maybe wasn't there before. Like some of my fears is like forgetting little things, forgetting like my dad's laugh or his smile, or like certain things he said, the way he said them, his voice in general. Like I don't want him to ever like fade away or be like a distant memory. I don't want to look back in 30 years and be like, oh, I remember my dad barely, you know, like I don't want to forget. I don't want him to be a distant memory. I don't want that to be this part of my life that I kind of like forget. I don't want to forget. And that's a fear that I have. You end up having fears too about like losing other people. Like my mom lost her dad when she was a little older than me, and now me losing my dad, we both kind of agreed that like we became very protective of our mothers. And like I'm very protective of like my brother, my boyfriend, my friends. Like I can't imagine losing another person close to me. It's just like a thought that like I can't bear to think about losing another person close to me right now. So it's definitely a fear that comes up, is like losing somebody else close to you. I think there's another part of me that felt like my dad wouldn't actually die. Like I knew he had stage 4 cancer. I knew it wasn't looking good. I saw him like essentially kind of dying, but it's like I feel like I'm at a point right now where I'm like still a young adult, like kind of realizing now that I guess that you're not invincible. And like growing up as a kid, you always look at your parents like they're just invincible, like they'll keep you safe, like nothing will happen to them, you know, they can't die, like they're your parents. Like it's just like as kids, like that's what's installed in your mind. And I think like you hear about all these horrible things happening and you think like, oh well, that'll never happen to me. Like you see someone lose a parent and you're like, oh my god, I can't imagine going through that, but like thank god that's not my situation. And then one day it is. And I guess it's just like I knew all this stuff, but I was like, a part of me just was like, well, he's not gonna die. He can't die. He's my dad. He can't die. He's invincible. He's like Superman, you know? One thing too is it makes you grow up faster than other kids your age. I guess like I feel like I went from being like a young stupid teenager to being like a young adult, and it's like it's kind of a bummer. Like I don't say this in a way that like I'm like, oh, I'm not doing stupid teenager things. Like it honestly kind of sucks. Like I don't really go out and party. I don't really like do like stupid things anymore because it's like I've just seen this like part of life that's so like horrible and just like makes you grow up so fast. And I think like kids who lose parents like at even younger ages, like they have to go through that, and it sucks, but it kind of just makes you like grow up mentally and like mature a lot really fast. Another thing that people don't really talk about is how like people are gonna reach out to you when you lose this person that you barely even talk to, maybe you've never even met before, and then people that you thought you were close to don't ever reach out at all, and they don't say anything, they're not there for you, and it like kind of really shows you like who's actually there for you and who's not, and it's a really shitty way to figure that out. But I had like friends from high school that I used to be really close to and I'm not anymore for different reasons, but I always kind of thought that they would like reach out because we spent so much time together and like they knew my dad, and they never said anything. And then there was people that checked in on me all the time that like I had never even met, or I'd met like once or twice. It's just like a very good show of character. Like it really made me realize that like there's people in my life that I never need to give another chance to, and I never need to see again, and like their history in my book. Another thing is that it's a weird reality to accept, and a lot of the times you're going to talk about that person like they're still here. It's kind of subconscious, but you may not say like, oh, my dad was this really cool guy. You say like, my dad is this really cool guy. Like you just kind of still like refer to them like they're still here because it's a hard concept to grasp. One quote that I read that I thought really applied to this was somebody, it was their mom, but I changed it to my dad. Somebody said that heaven was just a word until my dad died, or for me, afterlife. Basically, you refuse to believe that like they're not somewhere else. So it's like if you kind of like were iffy about like the afterlife, like at least for me, you know, when you lose somebody that close to you, it's almost like you're like, I can't imagine them not being out there somewhere. I can't imagine them not being in an afterlife. And it just becomes like more than a word. It becomes this huge thing, this mystery, this important part of the unknown, whereas before maybe it was just a word or speculation or something to talk about. Going off of that, the final thing I want to talk about that nobody tells you is that you can't wait to see them again, and you hope that you will see them again. It depends on what you believe in, obviously, but the thought of like ever even seeing my dad again is just something I hold on to. Like it's like almost like I'm gonna live my life out here for as long as I'm granted to be here, but then when it's like my time, I want to believe that I will see him again, and I look forward to it. Like I look forward to the day that we are reunited, wherever that is. That's it for this video. It's just something I kind of wanted to talk about, kind of bring awareness to, I guess, for whoever needs it. I know that there's people that can relate to this, unfortunately. I just want you guys to know that, you know, life goes on and it's gonna be okay, and you're never alone. Like people are always gonna be there. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It would really help me out. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I usually post happier, more fun videos, so they're not all this dark. And if there's anything you guys think I missed, or things that like you've gone through that I didn't talk about in this video, definitely comment it down below. I would love to know what kind of things that you guys have noticed through all this too, or just stories, or whatever you feel like commenting. Just let me know, because I love to read them. I will see you guys next week. Thank you for watching, and thank you for letting me be real and opening up.